Yep. Yes, I marked it right this time. We're actually going to get through probably the rest of 12, 13, and maybe even 14 today. So, because some of this stuff goes relatively fast. The most fascinating, I think, thing about today will be at the very end. Something that I didn't know, and it's pretty interesting. Chapter 12, verse 10. So we got, but right before that, what we did last week, the call of Abram. Remember the 7 promises. He'll be a blessing to nations, and those who bless you, he'll bless, and then whoever curses you, God's going to curse. All that, and then Abram, at the very end, set out and was going towards Negev. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind here before we get started: a faith that cannot be tested cannot be trusted. Okay, so I mean, our faith is going to get tested at time. So right here, when we get into verse 10, all right, verse 10 says, now there is a famine in the land. Okay, Abram had not had and never dealt with a famine before. Okay, this is the first famine that was ever kind of really brought up. Abram never had to deal with it. So right off the bat, he's going to make the wrong decisions. Okay, so here's what I told you at Gravel Hill, Tom. So it says, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. So Abram was not supposed to go, he was supposed to be headed towards this Negev. Okay, but instead this famine happened. He's freaking out, like, what am I doing? Nobody knows what's going on. So he decided to go down to Egypt, not going to where God told him to. He's like, I think I like my way a little bit better. I'm going to go down to Egypt. Okay, so he's going down. That'll play an important part later. He's actually going to go back up. And here's what Rick said about that. We would be safer. So use this like hypothesis. Well, not hyperbole, I think is the word I'm looking for. We would be safer in a famine, as long as that famine is in God's will, than in any other place out of God's will. And so right here, Abram is not staying in God's will, not going where he was supposed to. He's going down to Egypt. All right, verse 11. And as he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife, Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Okay, so he's already thinking, oh my gosh, these Egyptians, like he knows it's going to be bad. They're going to see my wife. They're just going to kill me, take her. And he's already starting to worry about himself, okay? So verse 13. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. So he is absolutely 100% worried about himself, because he says, so that I will be treated well for your sake. So I guess in those days, like if it's your sister, well, you're no threat. You're not going to want to marry your sister here. It's fine. You'd be all right, but I want your sister. We'll leave you alone for saying, hey, thanks for bringing your sister with you. And he's talking about his life being spared. So he's worried about himself. He's already coming up with this plan to save himself, and wants to lie. Now, remember, he's lying that it's his sister, but yet he's not completely lying, because it is his half-sister, but it just so happens to be his wife. Okay? So, yeah. So, but since it's his wife, I guess, and all that, well, we'll see at the end here, but like, people would have probably just come out and said, like, no, this is my wife. Probably would have been all right, but we'll see that here coming later. So he's lying, but yet not lying, because it is his half-sister, but Sarah is also his wife. And he's really only worried about himself right here. And this actually brings up, oh my gosh, Rick went on for quite a while. Okay, so I've talked about it a lot in here. Us men, we're supposed to be the headship of our family, okay? Especially spiritually, we're supposed to be the headship. Abram is not doing a great job. I mean, he hadn't had kids yet, because Sarah is still barren. But he's not doing a very good job, very good role here spiritually. A husband that's out of the will of God can bring untold trouble to his wife and to his children. And this was brought up, and it's just so great. Okay, so like it's great, like all of us guys are down in here. This is where churches should concentrate more. If they would concentrate on that principle right there, that men are the headship, which it's wrote in the Bible over and over, it goes all the way back to Adam and Eve, what we started with. God is a God of order. Every headship of man is Christ, and every headship of a woman is man. But then Christ's headship is also God. I forget what verse that is. I just read it the other day, in talking about Jezebel in Revelation. But so God is the God of order. That order, man, woman, or Christ, man, woman, should be how churches view it. Keep Christ first, then get the men, and then worry about everything else. But where do churches? I read it all the time on my wife's Facebook. I'm looking for a church with a great youth program or a great children's program. It's totally the wrong way to be thinking about this. Yes, it's great to be having all that stuff, but it should be worried about where's a great men program. We get men involved, it should trickle down through the rest of the family. What was Little Russell's statistic? If the man is the first one to come to Christ in the family, I think it's like 80 or 90% success rate, like the rest of the family. But if a child is, it's only like 5, 6, 7%.
But even with the wife, it's only like 60.
No, I think 30 or 40. I think. Well, I probably actually have one of them books in there, but it's not much. And you can look up them statistics. I'm sure they've changed a little bit too since Rick wrote that book. But that's a total wrong thing churches have been doing now. They should be concentrating on the men, and then everything else will fall into suit. But no, everybody's usually worried about children's programs, youth programs. How many more? Even this church, there's probably more Bible studies for women than there is for men. Now I don't know all the side ones, like Pat, you and Kent had one, So I don't know about them all, but I know there's quite a few for the women. So Abram right here, out of favor with God for going the wrong way, and it's just going to mess things up for a little bit here. But God's always got His grace with him too. Then so it all gets put back. But all right, so verse 14. When Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that she was very beautiful woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to the Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake, and Abram acquired sheep and cattle, male and female donkeys, men servants and maid servants, and camels. Okay, hold on to the maid servants, because we're going to see not today, but one of the maid servants that he held on to is going to be Hagar, that we'll see coming up later in Genesis. But so basically, Sarah, I'm not just going to call her Sarah, that's easier to say than Sarai or whatever, however you say it. But she's got taken to Pharaoh, okay? And Abram, just by calling Sarah his sister, and he's getting rich off of it. And Pharaoh's like, whoo, thanks for bringing your sister out here. Go ahead and take these cattle, these donkeys, the maid servants, the men servants, like all of it, camels. You got it all. You take anything you want. So Abram is here getting rich, while Sarah is over with the Pharaoh. Verse 17. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household. And get this, why? Because of Abram's wife, Sarah. God was not worried about Abram at this time. Like, nah, you screwed up here. I'm worried about the safety of your wife. And I'm going to inflict all these diseases and bad stuff on Pharaoh, so then he will realize who you actually are. Abram's worried about himself. God's worried about Sarah. So, and then this goes back to one of the promises earlier in 12. I think it's the last one. And it says, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. That's in verse 3 of chapter 12. Well, right now, Abram is not being a blessing at all to Pharaoh and his people, his kingdom, because he came up with this lie, this concoction to do this. God is throwing down diseases and judgment upon Pharaoh's people, all because Abraham wanted to lie to try to keep his own butt safe. He's not being a blessing at all to any of these people around here. All right, so verse 18. So, and here comes some of God's grace. He's gonna bail Abram out. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. What have you done to me? He said. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I look at her to be my wife? So I'm taking it she never became Pharaoh's wife because he says, I would have, to be. So I'm assuming she never became Pharaoh's wife. But the Pharaoh's just pretty much saying, like, why did you lie to me? If it had been just so much easier, you wouldn't have caused all this destruction upon me if you just would have said that was your wife. So verse 20, then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. So everything that the Pharaoh gave him, the Pharaoh was just like, boom, get out of here. I don't want any more of this disease stuff going on. Just take everything you got and get out of here with Sarah. So God had bailed Abram out.
Does that mean that Pharaoh knew about Abram's God?
Yeah. Well, he knew, I don't know about God, God himself, but he knew that, okay, hey, ever since I took this woman here, all of a sudden, I got all this bad stuff going on. So he could put two and two together. A little more detail on that wouldn't have hurt, but yeah, definitely Pharaoh knew it was all because of Sarah. All right, so here, Abram's going to repent. Doesn't just come out and tell you hey, he repented, okay, but he's gonna go back to where God wanted him, and things will be a little different. But just remember, and I still maybe always might want to do a study on this sometime, but sin will always matter, okay. Take David and Bathsheba. There's examples of his punishment that you don't see right away, but sin will always matter. So it will cause a problem here for Abram, just not right this minute, okay? So chapter 13 verse 1. So Abram went up, okay? Now he's going back out of Egypt. So he went down. We were talking about east and west. If you go east, that's usually bad. Now don't go down either, because apparently that's the bad direction. Just go the way God's telling you to go. So he went up from Egypt to Negev, where if you go back to verse 9 of chapter 12, that's where he was supposed to be going. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev with his wife and everything he had, okay? All the stuff that Pharaoh gave him, he's got it, okay? And Lot went with him. So he's still got his nephew Lot with him, which he was told a long time ago he was supposed to leave everything of his family, but Lot's still there, which that's going to get resolved later too. Let's see. Verse 2, Abram had become very wealthy in livestock and in silver and in gold. Verse 3, from the Negev he went from place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier, and where he had first built an altar. So he went back to where he was, to where he had built an altar. That was back, I believe, in chapter 12. There Abram called on the name of the Lord. Okay, so this is where he should have been the whole time, at the altar, asking for forgiveness for messing up. He went back there, repented here at the altar, to basically worship. It says there Abram called on the name of the Lord. I picture that as like one of the first worship service of Scripture. He wanted to get back in good standings with God there. Okay. Verse 5. Now Lot, who was moving about with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. So like I said, Lot and Abram was supposed to leave his family, okay, besides Sarah. supposed to leave all that stuff. Well, Lot's still coming along. He likes his nephew Lot. So if Abram's not going to do it, God's going to do it for him. Okay, just like God always has a plan, he might ask, Daniel to be part of this plan. Well, if Daniel refuses to be a part of it, he's just going to go on to the next line. Rick always talks about, his man church stuff that, he figured he was about 4th string. He probably figured God had probably like 2 or 3, 4 other people in front of him, and then it just fell on him, and he finally went with it and kept it going.
I wonder if, Abram and Lot's flocks was part of the famine that was created, and God was saying, hey, look, you're not following my rules exactly, because, he's with Lot, and he was supposed to go by himself. I wonder if,
that was part of God's plan of like,
Right.
hey, cause this famine so they would split up.
Right.
It's very possible.
I mean, he's sending down the fire. They didn't have nothing. So they went down there, and then all of a sudden he gets a bunch. Says, take all your stuff and go.
Yeah, that's true. So so I think about that. So like, if Abraham didn't, okay, there was this famine, maybe destroying some of their all their flocks and everything. They lose it all. Abram's like, I'll go down to Egypt. Well, then he winds up getting even more, and so now God's like, okay, now I'm gonna fix it again myself, and this time you ain't gonna be able to get around it. The ground. It says here that basically it's like having all this stuff on 5 acres. There's not enough room for everything. The land couldn't support them while they stayed together, for their possessions were so great that they were not able to stay together. Okay, but then here, verse 7, and quarreling arose between Abram's herdsmen and the herdsmen of Lot. Okay, so there's infighting amongst the groups, and if there's not enough room for the people and the animals, it's going to lead to fighting. You know what I mean? Like, you get that many people, like, even if we all had to stay in this room together for a long, long time, we're going to get at each other. So, I mean, it's just we're, human nature. That's right. So it says there in verse 8, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were also living in the land at the time. So remember, Canaanite, anything with the ites are winding up usually going to be bad people. And
About the Israelites.
okay, golly, bring up one. All right, you want to go back and read that whole list of ites? The Hamites.
Parasites.
Yeah, parasites. Look at that. All right, so Israelites. Okay, everybody but maybe the Israelites. Oh, shoot. Well, because Abram was called to go to the land of Canaanites earlier, so he knew he was going to be basically in behind enemy lines, so to say, but they're not coming into effect yet, really. So verse 8. So Abram said to Lot, let's not have any quarreling between you and me, or between your herdsmen and mine, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left. So Abram is letting Lot choose. Okay, and this is important. Lot gets the choice of where he wants to go. And then Abram will be happy with whatever's left. So Lot, this is where he makes a mistake here. Lot looked up and saw the whole plain of the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. So it says, like the land of Egypt. Okay, Egypt, beautiful place, but it's got its issues down there. Towards Zor. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, so Moses lets us know that hey, Lot's going to go down here, but this is before the destruction. So try to picture that. So I'll continue in 11. So Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out towards the east. The east. The two men parted company. Abram lived in the land of Canaan, where God told him to be, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. Okay? Sodom's going to be a really bad town that we get into. God's going to wind up destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. And you basically got to look at them almost like not even your Las Vegas, like just of the world, like just a town that was so beautiful Lot was thinking, that's where I want to be. I want to be among the world. I want to stand out with the world. But he's not looking towards God. Lot isn't. He chose the wrong path. And I can't wait till we get into more of Lot's thing. Because, I mean, Sodom, Lot might have figured that he could, you know, be the godly man above the crowd. But you stay in the world long enough, the world will start influencing you instead of you influencing the world. And this Lot, what we covered today, he chose Sodom right now, and he's going to choose Sodom again later. Lot decided to choose the beautiful place to set his tents. It might be beautiful to the eye and to the world, but it's ungodly. And I mean, we all know what happens in Egypt later. But that brings me to one verse talking about, so Lot's choosing the world, okay, not the godly place. 2 Peter 2, 6 through 8. Come on. Sticking together here. So one thing about this small thin line thing, like some of these books are like a page or two long. It's hard for me to get. Anybody got it? Somebody want to read it? 2 Peter 2 verses 6 through 8 should be talking about the world.
Peter 2, what do you want?
2, 6 through 8.
You want to read it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And if he reduced the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes and condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what is coming to the ungodly. And if his rescued righteous Lot, distressed by the depraved behavior of the immoral. You want all the way 8?
Yeah, read 8 because that's
Okay.
that's the big part right
For
there.
as that righteous man lived among them day by day, his righteous soul was tormented by the lawless deeds he saw and heard.
Yeah, so I mean, Lot at the time being a righteous person going into this filth, the filth started to weigh on Lot, and I mean began to change him. You know, I mean, it would even put in there was tormented. Yeah, his basic for the let's see how that, but for that righteous man,
in his righteous soul.
yeah,
Deep down inside.
tormented his soul. I mean, that's how bad the Sodom, and like I said, compare Sodom to the world, not just like your Las Vegases of the world, but just worldly things was wearing on Lot himself. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Lot wanted to be like the world, went into Sodom, and maybe we don't know, but maybe he had good intentions, like, hey, I'm going to be this godly man amongst all this worldly stuff. But Romans 12:2 says not to be conformed to the world. And then go into James 4. This is another real good one. In my Bible, it's like 2 pages right before that, before the 2 Peter. But James 4:4 says, you adulterous people, don't you know that, and get this, that friendship with the world is hatred towards God. Mm-hmm. Anyone who chooses to be afraid of the world chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. That verse right there, I mean, should be highlighted like 3 different colors if you could, you know, without it all
Like
blurring.
right and left, sheep and goats.
Yeah.
You know, really.
Yeah. Separate the sheep from the goats.
Yeah.
It's just so tough. And here, like, we don't have to deal in the Western church, the Western world, we don't have to deal with like outside persecution. I mean, not much. We kind of failed on COVID, I think, you know, as a church whole. for shutting down and stuff. But for the most part, we ain't, like we've been going through the 7 churches there in Revelation. A lot of them, several of them had persecution from the Roman Empire and stuff like that. Here in the Western world, we don't have to deal with that a whole lot, but we have to worry about from within, the world coming in. We get worldly people coming in that don't change, and then it starts affecting this next group, then this next group. That's what we really have to worry about. And the world is all around us, especially so much now with our phones and all the social media and all that stuff. I mean, before did this talk 30 years ago, been like, oh, the TV, is bad for you. Now we got to talk about our phones, so who knows what it's going to be like by the time, like my kids might be up here doing a Bible study. I mean, you probably don't even have to turn on anything. It just blink your eye, and the TV comes on in your head or something. Who knows? But the world is what's going to affect a lot of people, and we are not.
Wasn't it only the 7 churches that were the legit churches?
What's that?
Wasn't the 7 churches that you mentioned, they were the only ones good in God's eye?
So
That's why
what?
they're-
No, so those 7 churches, there's only one of them that only one of them that did it right.
Okay,
out
so
of the
it was
7.
one of the 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there was another one that didn't have any complaints, but God was still going to test them through fire. But
So
yeah,
it was
so
1 out of 7. So that's how
it's
how bad it is. What you're talking about.
That's right.
To me is so
5 out of the 7 were told to repent.
Yeah.
Like the words repent are in
Right.
in his letter
It's
to the
pretty
churches.
sad.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah. So yeah, there's just right here. Lot was choosing the world. It's just the same struggle that we have to deal with today. We are not to be conforming to the world. We should be sticking out from the world. And there'll be more on Lot later too. So let's see where we leave off. Verse 13. Now the men of Sodom were wicked and were sinning greatly against the Lord. So, Moses writes this in here, and I'm assuming Lot knew this. Like it doesn't say that, oh, he just went in there blindly, not knowing what they're like, but he knew it, so he intentionally went into Sodom here. All right, so verse 14 through 18. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had parted from him, lift up your eyes from where you are and look north and south, east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram moved his tents and went to live near the great trees, or some of them say the great oak tree or oak trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he built an altar to the Lord. So Abram's good about this. When he finally gets to where God told him to go, hey, I'm going to build an altar here. Keep worshiping the Lord. But the main thing, really, 14 through 18 there is pretty self-explanatory. But the main thing is he's still talking about Abram's offspring, and Sarah is still barren. Like there still hasn't been a kid on the ground yet, and God keeps talking about all of his offspring. You can't even count them because it's going to number the amount of dust on the ground. There ain't no way you can count the dust. So we'll get into chapter 14. All right.
There's a good footnote here to
Yeah.
emphasize what you said. While God commands all of us as Christians and believers to reach people like those in Sodom and Gomorrah, we must be careful not to become like those people who we are trying to reach for Him.
Yeah. That's tough too. Like you don't want to stay away from it because we're not called to completely stay away from it. But the trick is, like there it talks about in Romans, not to conform to it. But man, that is tricky. And maybe that was Lot's intentions. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some deep theologian maybe knows exactly what Lot was thinking. I don't know for sure, but maybe he was thinking he could go in there and try to transform those people, but it doesn't work out. And then we're going to see here at the end of 14, basically, so something's going to happen to Lot. Abram's going to get him rescued, and then he's just going to choose to go right back into Sodom again. So obviously he's not learning his lesson. I think that world just looked so good to him. Like, hey, I want a little bit of that.
Right, that's what it talks about.
You know what I mean?
He became
Brandon.
different after he left Abram. But that verse you referred to there said he had a righteous soul, and he was also tormented. So what that meant, he was struggling. And
Yeah.
Yeah, he was following what his eye showed him.
Yep. Yep. He's seen that it looked good,
Right,
looked good to
with
the eye.
Water and all that.
Yeah.
That's what it talks about.
Yep. Yeah, that was, what verse was that, Pat?
Well, I was reading in down
The
here.
whole plain of joy is, it was well watered like the garden of the Lord.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was somewhere.
That's verse 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there, 10.
Look good and
We
pleasing.
looked at the two options and saw that the entire plain garden was well watered.
Yeah.
Right.
Look good to the eye.
Yeah.
Wasn't good for the soul.
There you go.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
focusing on the scene.
So, chapter 14, we're going to kind of see three different roles of Abraham. It's tough calling him just Abram. He's going to be Abram the watcher, Abram the warrior, and then Abram the worshiper. Kind of all here in 14. Verses 1 through 12 is mostly about the watcher part, okay? There's going to be a big kind of battle war thing going on. 14 verse 1. At this time, Amraphel, king of Shinar, okay, there's a lot of kings going on here. Okay, I'll just pick up in 3. All these later kings joined forces in the valley of Siddim, the Salt Sea. For 12 years they had been subject to that guy, but in 13th year they rebelled. Okay, so like I said, there's a big war going on, and Abram is just sitting back, okay, watching this go on. It actually goes on till 5 does it more. Then they turned back and went, so the war, 8, 9. Okay, so I'm going to pick up an 8. You can go back and read all them some of them hard words, but it's just talking about the kings allied with this guy and that guy. So in verse 8, that's where it gets a little more important. And a little side note, so here about these wars and allies and that, this is actually the first mention of war in the Bible. And there could have been other wars going on, because I'm sure when the earth populated, even before the flood, I'm sure there was probably wars and all that, but I'd say the only reason this is wrote down now is probably just because Abraham and Lot are going to be involved in it, and we're going to see coming up. And so it's just one of the important things that Moses decided to write down. God told him to write these stuff down because they're going to be involved in it. All right, so in verse 8, it says, Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the kings of Zebulun, and the kings of Bela, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up the battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Dad, and king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elsalah. Okay, so there's 4 kings. The main thing I want to get out of that is there's 4 kings against 5. All right, verse 10. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fled to the hills. These kings at this time, okay, the 5 kings versus the 4 kings, which I want to concentrate on. These kings, they're things like, think of them as like they're just larger cities, maybe the size of states. They weren't like just huge empires. Sodom and Gomorrah are part of the 5, which they're gonna. I see the way it is. I think they're gonna lose now, but then they're gonna get back with it. They're Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, and let me read this first. So Ezekiel 16, 49, and 50, because it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah there a little bit. Ezekiel, Daniel. Ezekiel 16, 49, and 50. 49 and 50. Just remember them tar pits and stuff in the back of your mind. 16, 49, and 50. So 49 says, Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore, I did away with them as you have seen. Okay, we're not going to see them destroyed here completely. But the part I want to take out of that, so Sodom and her daughters, basically these other kings that are allying with her, they were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. Okay, so they were just sitting back like, hey, we got all this. They probably the kings probably never even went out and even knew even kind of what ground they had, because here it says there was tar pits in there, and they're stupid enough, they had people falling in these tar pits. That'd be like me going to my farm and not knowing where all my holes are and potholes and stuff, in the fields that come up. These kings were so arrogant, sit back, eating their big turkey legs, like you'd see on TV and stuff. They didn't even have a care in the world to go out and actually explore the ground they were in. So when they got into this battle with these four kings, shoot, they fall in their own tar pits, and then it says some of the men fell into them, and then the rest fled up in the hills. But going back to Ezekiel there, it just makes perfect sense. A lot. That's why, because they didn't even know what was going on. They were just too overconfident. All right. So verse 11. The four kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah. So the five kings, which is what Sodom and Gomorrah are part of, lost this battle. Okay, so the four kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food. Then they went away. In verse 12, they also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. So he was there in Sodom. These four kings that won the battle got Lot. Okay. Verse 13, one who had escaped came and reported this to Abram the Hebrew. Okay, why does he put in Hebrew right now, the Hebrew? A lot of it goes back to him just being the watcher. They put Abram the Hebrew because it means like he had no part of any of this. They just labeled him as a Hebrew because he's just been sitting back, not doing anything. He's not involved in anything. And obviously, it's helping to explain who Abram is, but it's just there to show that he basically was not involved in any of these wars. Abram, been a man of peace, but he's also been preparing for war too, okay, which we'll see. So, Abram the Hebrew, continuing on in 13. Now, Abram was living near the great trees of Mamre the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Aner, all of whom were allied with Abram. So Abram might not have been involved in any of these wars yet, but he's got allies, he's got friends, okay? He's been preparing. So verse 14, when Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Look at that, Daniel. You made the Bible already. So what does it mean? Trained men born in his household. Household, because he hasn't had babies yet or kids, huh?
Manservants?
Well, from what I read, it's more like all spiritual children. So basically all believers of God, followers of God. Okay, they're all on the. I think Rick put it. They're all on the same page spiritually, and these men are trained. Okay, trained men means they've been tried. They're experienced. They're armed. They're not just pitchforks and torches. They're ready to go. At least there's 318 of them are. They're ready. They've been waiting. They just been peaceful so far, but they've always been preparing. So Abram had these 318 ready to go, all on God's side. No, let's so to say, outsiders of the church, so to say. They're all there. All right, so verse 15. During the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. And then verse 16, he recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions together with the women and the other people. So he got everything back. Complete victory, Abram did. Abram had complete victory. And this is, so these few verses here, 14 through what, that was 16, we got Abram the warrior right there, okay? And then the rest of chapter 14, we kind of get into Abram the worshiper. So he got Lot back, okay? So verse 17, after Abram returned from defeating, man, that's a big long word, Kedar, and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shaveh. That is the king's valley. Okay, so Abram won, got his 318. Abram won, and so basically he was helping the 5 kings, Sodom, Gomorrah. He was helping them. So the king of Sodom comes out to meet with Abram. Okay, then here is a good kicker. In verse 18, then Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abraham, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. So who's this Melchizedek guy?
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek.
Melchizedek?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Melchizedek.
So who is this guy? Okay, we've never been there. He's not mentioned.
He's the king of Salem.
Yeah. Good call, Pat. Oh shoot. Okay, true. And where did I have it? I thought I had it wrote down. It's got to be in somebody's study Bible. Salem
Okay, so
should mean. I think it didn't it mean
King of peace.
peace. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I didn't write that down, but I remembered it. So
The early name for Jerusalem.
yeah. So yeah, Salem, early name for Jerusalem, peace. So if Melchizedek is the king of Salem, meaning peace, he's the king of peace. Who else has been called king of peace? Jesus. Okay. There's some that say this Melchizedek. Okay, we're going to read a scripture about him. Oh, please tell me I wrote that down. All right, but some say that this Melchizedek, some think it actually was Jesus. Okay. And then others say if it's not Jesus, it's a prototype of Christ. Okay, it's like an Old Testament prototype of Christ. Boy, where I cannot believe I didn't write that down. I'm pretty
what
sure.
are you looking for?
Well, okay, so there's a New Testament verse that talks about Melchizedek and how he has no genealogy. People don't know where he's from.
Hebrews 7:1-9.
What I bet
I got
I'm
that listed there.
pretty sure it is in Hebrews.
Hebrews 7:1-9 is what it says.
I don't know how I didn't not write that down. No, I got it highlighted, but I sure didn't write it down. I even got a note. Genesis 14 right beside it. All right, so that's Hebrews 7, 1 through...
9 is what it says here.
Okay. Yeah, and actually it'll go... Actually, the whole chapter is about Melchizedek. But I have verses 1 and 2 are highlighted here. So Hebrews 7 verse 1, this Melchizedek was the king of Salem and priest of God Most High. He met Abraham returning from the defeat of the kings and blessed him. Okay, which we just read that in Genesis. And Abraham gave him 1/10 of everything. Okay, we didn't read that part yet, but Abraham gave him 1/10 of everything. First, his name means king of righteousness. Then also king of Salem means king of peace. Okay, and then verse 3. Without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, like the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. Okay, so we don't. I know that was like the mind blowing thing of the study in these last two chapters. This Melchizedek guy comes showing up. So one time I even like this was a little bit ago. I googled like who were the guys, because I can never remember, that never died, and that was when we were talking about Enoch, because Enoch was the one that didn't die. And this Melchizedek dude kept coming up too, in that. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. And then here I finally run across it, and I'm like, holy cow, we don't know the beginning of his days, the end of his life. We don't know nothing about him, except it says that he was a high priest of God. What does it say? He was a priest of God Most High, and Jesus calls himself the high priest. Which we know Jesus' genealogy, but we don't know the genealogy of this Melchizedek guy. So it's super. I mean, you could probably dig into it, and you can read the rest of Hebrews chapter 7 there, because it goes on and talks about him a lot more. But it's just super, super, very interesting to be like, why is this guy stuck in here? Okay.
David even wrote about him.
Did he?
Psalm
Psalms,
110,
yes,
verse
that's
4.
right.
All right. Well, read it if you got it.
The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek.
Yeah. And so that's the second time it said
There's a
priest
certain
forever.
order, I guess in the priest of that day.
And it said he'd be a priest forever. Yeah, and that's what it said there in Hebrews. So I mean, Jesus is going to be a priest forever.
Well, that's what,
I think they're talking about Jesus here.
that's what you read right there.
Don't
Yeah.
you?
Mm-hmm.
What does it say in the Jeremiah?
Read it, the part there in the historical speaking part.
Yeah, I'm missing it, Tom, go ahead.
However, that guy's name is picture a type of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The Old Testament. One who illustrates Christ's eternal priesthood and kingship. He is not Christ himself. And it goes to Hebrews 7.
Yeah.
In an appearance before his incarnation, as some Bible teachers are. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the other ones, commentaries just say he's Christ-like, like a prototype of Christ, just like basically what David Jeremiah was saying there. But then there was some that say no, like, hey, I almost bet you $1,000 like this dude was Christ, and he just, a little prelude here of it. But either way, whichever way you want to take it, like that is still just super fascinating to know that he was there. So picture him. So you got the king of Sodom, okay, coming to Abram after this battle, this victory. And then you also got this Melchizedek guy coming to Abram too, okay? And Melchizedek blesses Abram, all right? So then, the end of verse 20, then Abram gave him a tenth of everything, okay? Abram gives this Melchizedek a tenth of everything before there's ever any talk of tithing. It hadn't become a law yet in Leviticus or anything. This Melchizedek already got a tenth of it. Just another way this guy is so Christ-like if he's not, an Old Testament version of Jesus. So, verse 21. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, 21. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have raised my hand to the Lord God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and I have taken an oath," and here's his oath, "that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the thong of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, 'I made Abram rich.'" Verse 24, "I will accept nothing but what men have eaten, and the share that belongs to the men who went with me to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share." All right, so he had two choices. Abram did. The Melchizedek brought out bread and wine, okay, to Abram for his victory. The king of Sodom said, "Give me the people." Sodom wanted his people back, but he said, "You can keep all them other goods that you have acquired, all the maidservants, manservants, the camels, everything. that they took from this battle. Okay, not from before when he was lying about Sarah, but from that he just took in verse 16. He said he recovered all the goods brought back to him. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot. So when they won this battle, they raided everything, took everything back with them. So the king of Sodom says, "You keep all that. Just give me my people back. Keep all that." And Melchizedek just says, "Hey, I got some bread and wine for you." Okay, bread and wine. Where is it? That goes back to Jesus. Okay, and so Abraham had two choices here: bread and wine from Melchizedek, the God's way, or all the goods from the king of Sodom that is not God's way. And what did he do? He wound up, doing Melchizedek, and then it wound up giving him a tenth of everything. So Abraham chose right in this situation. He did not do the worldly thing. He chose God's standard and not the world's standard. Now it probably would have been a big deal, if he won this battle to the king of Sodom. Then hey, got all that stuff. Who knows what he looted from the battle? He would have been a big deal by the world, but he said, "No, I'm good." And he's like, "I just want to stand right with God again." So he just took the bread and wine that was offered from Melchizedek. And then it doesn't say, but so Lot though got rescued. Okay, Lot went back to Sodom, and that'll come up again later. So Lot had another choice to make: choose God way or the Sodom way, the world way. Lot didn't make the right choice. So we'll see him pop up again. And remember, in the previous chapter, because it's going to come up when he was given all the maidservants and manservants, that'll come into play here when we get into chapter 16 with Hagar. All right, all good? Been about an hour.